First thing, exits are out and to the left and to the right back there. Restrooms are back over here if you've never been in the building. And feel free to have any drinks or snacks back there. We do have a sign-in sheet, so hopefully everybody has signed in. And that way we can make sure that you get notice of the next meeting as well. There'll be outreach about it as well. My name is Kevin Geiger. I'm with the Regional Planning Commission, the Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission, and we serve from Heartland to Newberry over to Granville down to Plymouth. So that 30-town chunk. And we think about the future, and that's what we're here tonight for. It's what I do every day is kind of what do you want to have happen out there in the world. And we as citizens, of course, don't necessarily do that all the time, but this is your chance to think about your community, and especially what do you want. There's also some town plan stuff going on the board we'll talk about, I think, because this meshes a little bit with that as well. That's, of course, the bigger picture of what do you want with the town, not just what do you want with this neighborhood. So we're going to have some inside time, some workshop time, some outside time for those who want it and don't mind getting maybe rained on later. But I'm glad to see you here, certainly, because this is a great piece of town. It's got a lot of potential right now and a lot of potential going forward. So thanks. And Lori?
So I just want to thank Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission for making this possible for us to have this conversation, because they were able to find some funding in their program and offered it to us knowing that we had this redevelopment potential going on in this area. And then they were able to, with those funds, engage consultants to be working with us. So thank you very much, Kevin, for that phone call. Always welcome. So what I'd also like to talk about is a little bit of how this is fitting in with the overall picture of what's going on in the town. Many of you may have seen the flyers and the notices that we've had up, and maybe even attended some of the meetings that we've had over the last month talking about our town plan. And that really is looking at the big picture of what's going on in town. And we're having a series of community meetings. We've done our first one, which was basically a 101, and then sort of starting to dig into some of the issues surrounding all of those issues about our town and opportunities. And then we had another wonderful meeting at the beginning of this week dealing with the topic of energy. Our next one coming up, which is on July 11th, and there are flyers behind that I will get to you. Then we have another one coming, and that's going to be on community facilities and looking at historic preservation and community character. And then we have another one after that, which is going to be looking at land use and natural resources. And then we'll start digging down a little bit more into other subjects. So that'll be on July 11th, July 18th, and it's July 11th, July 16th, and then the 25th, so 23rd. So anyway, I wanted to make sure that everyone is available in your schedule. You can get that, and we'd love to see you at other events. But again, thank you for coming out this evening. I'd also just like to see, with a show of hands, how many people here are property owners, just with a show of hands? I mean, in the study area, actually, I'm sorry. In the study area that we're talking about. Are you a property owner? Okay. And how many people, and that's the area over by Pine and Maple is our study area. And how many people are actually tenants within the Pine and Maple Street area? Businesses there. Okay. And then how many other people here are from the general public, or either a resident or a property owner or a business within the greater White River area? Okay. And then the town as a whole. Okay, great. Well, thank you for coming out. I appreciate it. You taking your time. This is going to be a really important conversation. What I'd like to do now is to introduce one of the members of the team, which is Stephen's associate, and Mark
Westa.
Westa.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Hi.
Thanks for coming. I have a couple of my colleagues here, Taylor and Nikki, and we have some people from Sandboard Head in the back, Jen and Heidi, that are working with us on this project. And I really want to thank you all for coming out. I think it's a pretty important project. So I just want to go over a few housekeeping things to get us going and kind of lay out the agenda for what we're going to do today, and then get started. If you are having any problems hearing me at any point, just let me know. Hold your hand up or whatever. So the study area, you should have picked up a agenda and then a little map, and I just want to make sure that everybody's pretty comfortable with the area that we're looking at. So there's kind of two maps, one where you can see the existing buildings and parking lots and things like that, and they're highlighted and there's a few labels on there. And then there's another one where kind of that area is washed out a little bit. And that's to help you kind of see clearly see the kind of study area. So does anybody have any questions about that before we get started? Because that's pretty important to the whole thing here, that we're all on the same page. We're all good with that? All right. We're going to talk about some workshop guidelines, but I'll save that to the end. In about 10 minutes, well, time flies, pretty soon. It says 6:45 on the thing. What we're going to do is talk about some uses that we might like to see in this area. We would really like to acknowledge that there are a lot of existing uses out there that are great, and we appreciate those and we like those. But we want to do some brainstorming about things that might add into that mix, might be interesting. So we're going to do a couple things related to that. After that, I have kind of a slideshow with some images from some other places, and those will be just kind of to help you think about sort of the same idea, but a little bit more in like the form of things, what they look like, what they feel like, and we'll talk about those. And then after that, at 7:30, we'll actually kind of use these maps to put down things that you want to say about this area. It could be sort of notes about what is there, what you like, what you dislike, or it could be almost sketches of buildings, about the future, things like that. So when we get to each one of those stages, we'll kind of talk about exactly what we're going to do. And then we'll kind of wrap up, and then hopefully we'll be done by 8:30, because I'm sure everybody has good things to do, like sleep and other things before we get on too late. So I did just want to kind of go into the workshop guidelines, and some of those are written kind of on the back of this. I was writing this out as kind of notes to myself to talk to you all about, and then I said, well, maybe I should just hand it out. And so a couple things that I really want to point out is obviously this is your community, your land, you're the people that are here, so you know the stuff. And we're here to kind of see what we can learn about that and record some of that. We're definitely here to listen. We're going to have items to kind of discuss, and we do have quite a bit of experience with development, engineering, architecture, landscape architecture, financing type issues. So we can talk about those a little bit, but really it's about you guys and us hearing up and recording what we're hearing. Another thing is when we say the workshop is about, it really is about ideas. There are no bad ideas. It's easy to edit ideas and kind of, say they aren't great ideas later, but for now, let's just kind of be creative and put any ideas that we have out there. And then I also like to say that this is about the future. If you think about land development, it usually takes quite a long time. If you think back 10 years ago or something, a lot of this town was probably significantly different. Things have changed and morphed over that 10 years. So if we put ideas out here right now that we don't expect to happen right away, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, things will happen. If we put it down on paper, then as the town and others look at things, they'll be like, oh, well, there's already an idea out there. Let's go with that idea. So it's about ideas, and it's about putting it down on paper and kind of seeing where it goes. And then just some rules. We are going to have some discussion time, so I think that everybody feels like they can be creative and put ideas out on the table. And then if people have comments or discussion, we'll just kind of try to hear what one person has to say and then move on to the next person, and kind of keep it moving fairly rapidly. So those are kind of my guidelines for the discussion. Does anybody have any questions about any of that part?
Mark, could I just offer just an observation in terms of one of the things that you said? So in terms of putting out there into the future, what you want to see, walking down the street in 10 years, and what do you see? So everybody's seeing what we see, what's happening in downtown White River Junction right now. That is the result of a plan that we put together with the community in 2008 and 2009.
Perfect.
And we're building it out.
Yep.
And that was made up not just of members of the staff, but members of the community like yourself, some of who are still here today working on this next iteration for us. So keep in mind that what you're doing today really is about leaping a little bit of faith into the future, even though that what you see there doesn't necessarily match up with what you see as an opportunity. But if you put it out there, it's amazing how it starts to happen.
Right, exactly. And I think it's great that you have an example right here to see how that happens, because in a lot of towns it's a little hard to get that imagination going, but here you can see the direct results. All right, so the thing that we're going to do at 6:45, so we're just a few minutes late, is we're going to kind of discuss potential uses for this site. And Taylor's going to record on the board here. If any of you saw the flyer, we put a few of these ideas out there on kind of the side of the flyer, but I'm not even necessarily going to tell you what those are, unless you want me to. What I want to do is hear from any of you, anything that you might want to possibly see in this area that you think would be helpful, beneficial, interesting, exciting, whatever. So who's going to be my first volunteer? Thank you.
A large town library.
All right. Interesting. So is there a library now?
Lots of little ones.
Little ones, okay.
There is a town library, which is owned by the town, which is in West Hartford, and it's a smaller library, not necessarily central within the town, but that is the town. And then there are other libraries that are run by organizations privately, but are supported partially by the town.
All right, great.
So I think this has to be mixed use. We want people living in our downtown area. So apartments of various rents, various sizes, various configurations. Nothing cookie cutter. Nothing has to be uniform. It would allow people to live comfortably in the downtown area.
So mixed use, and a big part of that being apartments?
Apartments, condos, various rents, various sizes, not cookie cutter.
Okay, nice. I'll give Taylor a minute to, we definitely want to record this, so Nikki's taking notes and Taylor's working on the board there. All right, yes sir.
So I'll second the mixed use. I think that's worked well. Residential being, challenged near the railroad, but we've got quite a bit of that happening now, and I think if the building's built right, that can be mitigated, so you have to have a special eye on that. The potential for, there's a demand for some restaurants right there,
Okay.
particularly lunch spots.
Yeah.
There's with the state offices and the other development right across the rail there, that folks go to the co-op, but it's relatively limited selection. It's not a restaurant, it's a stop, grab a bite and go.
Right.
So there's definitely some potential for some lunch spots and probably some dinner spots too.
Okay.
Breakfast along those lines. I'll also throw out there, somebody suggested to me a space for an indoor farmer's market.
Okay.
Would be maybe, Stearns being right there might like to participate in that kind of thing and help bring people with other vendors to that location.
Sure. Are there other farmers markets kind of in the area?
There's one just over the border in Norwich.
We have one now started that in West Hartford. It's been going for the last several weeks, month.
Okay.
Did they get much of a farmer's market at Newbury's Market now when they do the?
They do have some things there, but it's not so much as a farmer's market as
Yeah.
more as just a merchant's market.
Yeah, merchant's market. Yeah, that's what I envisioned that. So it's not really set up well. That space isn't really set up well for the farmer's market.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, sir.
What about a game arcade room for like the children to keep them out of trouble?
Yeah. So an inside game room space. Okay.
Yeah, like a teen spot, teen
Yeah.
hangout spot.
Other than going to
Town
the
needs
Listen
that.
Center,
Yeah.
Yep.
because over at the Listen Center there, they go there, but they play music instead of playing games.
Yeah.
Have another one downtown here just for gaming usage only.
Right. And so where would the kids come to do that? Obviously, there's people next to the school, right? Other places?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know there's got one in Laconia, and it's a huge one.
Okay.
Something like that would be good down for this area.
What kind of things do they have in it?
They have arcade games, like video games.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. What else? Yes, sir.
I'll piggyback onto the mixed use under the housing. I think that affordable housing at that single home buyer or a couple, but also something that is kept at a level. I was reading an article about what's going on in Laconia, where they're doing a development for first-time buyers, but also within the deeds of those properties, it is such that the person who buys one of those can sell it and make a profit, but it's to also keep it so it all of a sudden doesn't turn into demand outstrips the ability of people with limited income or young starting families to be able to afford a place. So
Yeah.
eventually they'll grow out of that, but it's not for somebody who just sold their $400,000 home and is downsizing and now is going to go pluck one of these up.
Right.
So a little bit more of a focus, but again, there are some good examples out there.
Yeah. Great.
I think to that end, throughout the Upper Valley, housing density seems to be a particular focus, not just in Hartford and White River, but on both sides of the line. And what we see is a lot of folks, it's kind of a transient population. Yes, you have people that are from here, people that move here. You get a lot of people related to the hospital, related to Dartmouth College, that aren't necessarily going to be here long term. Now the hope is that people will come and stay. But I think creating more housing density, both affordable and market rate, gives people a sense to be in or near a downtown. And that encourages community participation, which ultimately encourages more long-term residency versus someone saying, I was there for 3 years and now I'm gone.
Right. So I think when we look at the photographs, it will get a little bit at this question of density, but do you have anything in mind that would describe the density that you're thinking of?
Just my own company last year redeveloped the College Cleaners building on South Main Street.
Okay.
And 22,000 square foot fire trap is now a really kind of cool, full 36 unit building. And so I think there's opportunities here to repurpose some of these buildings. I'm not saying they all have to be that, please don't make them all that. But there is a need. We see this not just for good quality market housing, nice, cool urban style places, but also good quality housing stock for affordable housing.
Yeah.
Because right now it's, as folks that aren't as fortunate get pushed sort of to the margins, they end up down the street in a shady lawn and in less than ideal housing situations. I think creating good housing keeps those folks as part of the community, and it's to the benefit of all.
Good. Okay.
I also think that if it is going to be affordable for all, we need to have, like, not so much like another co-op, but something where people can go shopping that can afford it if we're going to have affordable housing in this area. Because I think that can be a real barrier for folks that are really struggling. They have their housing, but there's nothing else they can do in the community.
Right. Are you talking particularly grocery shopping or other types of shopping?
I would say grocery shopping,
Yeah.
or a mix of something with the grocery. I mean the co-op's great, but there's a lot of things you can't afford in the co-op for people that are, making a little over minimum wage.
Yep. Okay. Are there things outside of sort of buildings that people might want to see? As far as how their streets are, or parks, or plazas, or playgrounds, or anything like that? Yes?
So currently at the end of Pine Street, the school has community gardens that are built there and a walking meditation labyrinth that was recently built there.
Okay.
So if more people are coming for apartments into the area, it would be really good to think of green space for those people to be able to use and even grow some of their own food. So an extension of community gardens that could be for residents and not just for the school children would really cheer up the downtown and also allow people to interact with supporting themselves with their food.
Great. So are there community gardens in the community elsewhere?
There are. There's a community garden at Ratcliffe Park, which is across town.
Yeah.
And I think that it's the way of the future, and there could certainly be more.
Great.
Specifically if it were for people living in that area to have green space to work.
Right. Absolutely. What else? Yes, sir.
So, I think a few years ago on the Prospect Street project, if it goes to the phase 3 of, I'm not sure if it's still in play or not, but there was talk about having a roundabout there at that point.
Okay.
But that's great and might help that, but then we've got the railroad underpass there that's really narrow. That's the gateway to wherever from Westa. So I don't know what could be done, but if you have a roundabout at Prospect and then you've got kind of a bottleneck there at the railroad trestle, maybe that could, some thought could be getting that widened or beautified somehow to make our entryways here a little nicer.
Okay, so it's partly about traffic flow and partly about entry and identification and okay, good. Who else has an idea? We're supposed to be creative here. Yes, sir.
So we're struggling right now with the town pool being closed, and we've got a great bunch of folks looking at alternatives, either for that site or another site.
Yeah.
And I'm not, not a huge proponent of a pool, but this seems like if we're going to have a pool, there might be some potential in this space to locate a pool, given its location to a significant portion of the town's population. And I think that goes right along the lines of the teen center. That's one of the big complaints about having the pool closed, is that a lot of the teens in town recognize that as kind of their space. This is the place that teens it's all kind of run by teenagers. They have a real social connection to that pool. So that made me think. And then just the other comment, looking at this, the longer I look at this, one thing I don't like that I see now is a whole lot of pavement.
Right.
I really like to see a lot less pavement. I know you gotta have a place to park your cars these days, and hopefully those days are going to be behind us in the not too distant future. But particularly, looking at that bus depot just seems like there's so much better. I can understand why maybe it was there originally, but there's so much better use of that space, and probably sticking it somewhere over on Sykes Ave would be better, cheaper. There's just and easier. It's easier access from Sykes Ave to everywhere in town than this spot. For the buses to get to.
Yep.
So that would open up a whole bunch of nice space right there in the middle.
So I think, the question of parking, everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people like their car. Mm-hmm. They like to be able to move places. They like to be able to park. But then we look at a plan like this and we go, wow, that really is a lot of pavement for different reasons. And of course we know that, in the future, things might change a little bit. Biking's more popular, ride sharing, all that good stuff, who knows. And even the idea that if we do have housing in the mix, maybe instead of people having to get into their car and drive, they can just go downstairs and walk. So, all those things need a balance, but that's a really good point. The amount of paving maybe could be changed to either building or green space or plaza space or something else. Yes, sir.
And I think that gets to the scale of the other related infrastructure. I echo the letter that was in the Valley News today about getting rid of the gantry signage that feels very much suburban. Like
Okay.
It's to the scale of an automobile going 65 miles an hour
Right.
on the interstate, as opposed to what could be a beautiful pedestrian boulevard
Right.
modeled after many European models and
Sure.
examples. So
Yeah.
I think that cars and pedestrians can coexist, but it has to be designed well.
Yeah. Good. Yes.
Just following up on the pedestrian boulevard, the idea that we could have a space which is designed to not be not accommodate cars, but that would have vendors on the sides. That type of thing could be a real distinction for that area.
Yeah. Vendors, as in stores or smaller type things?
Yeah, if there was whatever restaurant, cafe, any kinds of shops, you could call them.
Any kind of retail, eating, selling.
With a what do you call it? Walkable plaza boulevard going down in between them. Like
Yep. Okay, good. Yes, sir.
I've only lived here since November, so I'm just. But this doesn't seem very walkable right out here.
Yeah.
I'm concerned. I'm 80 years old, and I'm concerned about trying to cross that street. What these guys are making.
Yeah.
It would seem to me there's a lot to be done to make it more walkable.
Yeah.
The other thing, is there anything that the town, is there any space the town needs, the county needs, that this area could satisfy? I mean, like this bank building on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any unmet needs?
That's a good question. I mean, it is kind of a nice building, right? It's well constructed for sure. And it's got space within it, so maybe it could be put to a good use.
It's safe inside?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Put your gold in it?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I think the issue of walking is, I think a lot of people walking, is, you kind of take it for granted, but you realize that when you're a young kid, safe walkings is critical. When you have your own children, it's critical. As you grow in age, it's critical. There's so many ages that kind of pedestrian realm is important. I think when you're 22 and spry, it's okay to take on the cars, but otherwise, it's a little tough sometimes.
The other thing I was wondering about is if you're going to increase the affordable housing, and if there's anything that can be done to have the bus service more frequent.
Okay.
To service this area, I would think that would attract people into the area, into the affordable housing.
Absolutely. Yep. I think I saw another, yeah.
Another thought, I see the boundary is kind of drawn on the north side of Maple Street, but I think it'd be a shame if we don't consider possibilities to engage the river.
Oh.
And maybe that would be a great place for pedestrian walk.
Right.
Walk.
Right. Well, I mean, the boundaries of this study are kind of what they are, but the idea that we bring, the idea that we incorporate adjacent ideas, at least, point at it and say this would be a great connection. Yeah, why not? We can do that. Yeah?
So, I have young children, and I know that, we like to go to parks and stuff, but when it's rainy, there's not a lot to do around here.
Okay.
We'd have to go to Claremont if we want to go bowling or somewhere else for them to just get off some of their energy, but still, be part of the community.
Yeah. Great. Do you have any thoughts on what that could be?
We used to have a bowling alley. I know it's been closed for a while.
Yeah.
Art places, just anything to engage them.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So we're kind of getting near the end of our time, but I see that.
So just kind of along the lines of a couple folks said is maybe some sort of a maker space.
Yeah.
And even maybe a kid-friendly maker space.
Yeah.
Of sort.
Absolutely. I mean, that can definitely be for teenagers pretty easily, but it could also be for younger ages than that.
I'm thinking of even some of the programs in school for any age.
Yeah.
That could be, so yeah, teenagers, but also even younger children with their parents or caretakers.
Yeah. Does everybody know? Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to throw out there in terms of thinking about reuse of the buildings, but also thinking beyond just the shape of the existing building and what you see it as. Buildings can be added onto, expanded in many different ways. I don't know that we, sometimes you could repurpose an existing building, and sometimes it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
Well, and you have to think about building something new. And I'm not suggesting that that's what we do here, but I just think beyond a little bit of what you see there today of, if you were to add a second story, for example, to one of the buildings there, what does that get you? Or 2 more stories. Right. Or add an addition on the back end of it. Think about it that way too.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, does everybody know what this idea of a makerspace is about? Kind of a place where people can kind of build stuff. A lot of times there's actually kind of experts there that help you. It could be woodworking, it could be metal work, it could be printmaking, it could be all kinds of things. And a lot of times it's a shared resource. Instead of you having to buy your own tools, you become part of this thing where then the tools are available. There's a little bit of expertise. There can be interesting things like 3D printing, model making, all kinds of different things. So it's kind of an interesting idea. There's some really good examples out there.
I'm just thinking about the process, including the downtown. And so starting from the standpoint of what's missing in the downtown, and what happens here kind of complement. The two of them are within walking distance from one another, certainly.
Absolutely.
And so things like we've talked about post office space, we've talked about movie theater space, other kind of needs like that that are not in the downtown, but kind of think of this as an extension that way. It's just part of the planning process.
Did you get those? You said post office and theater?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my main point is just to think of it as
right. Yeah. One thing I just wanted to do that I had on the agenda here is just to finish up this idea of uses. For you guys to think about other places you have gone where something was really interesting or exciting that you did or you visited that somehow you think is appropriate here. So, maybe we all went to Disney World, but maybe that's not appropriate here. But maybe you went to another town and something they had there, you were like, wow, that's unique and interesting. And maybe you never thought, well, could I have that here? So I guess I'm just asking you to think about that for a second. Does anybody have any thoughts along that line? Yeah.
Like a theater, like a drive-in movie theater.
Yeah.
Where you can actually have the big screens outside and you watch it. Like, I've seen so many of them already.
Good old
over
school
in Laconia,
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Or having the pool with the movie screen section.
That too.
Yeah.
That too.
Outside the box here.
Trampoline park?
Trampoline
like
park.
Sky Zone kind of place?
Yeah.
Oh, Sky Zone, yeah, okay. We had one in the back.
Yeah, I remember Durango, Colorado, beautiful
Riverwalk, yeah.
Even a place for handicapped people to bring their wheelchair along and do some fishing.
Yeah.
It was fabulous.
You loved it. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yes, sir?
It would seem to me that if you used the river, you could combine the two spaces. Combine what's across the river with what's going to be over here.
Yeah.
And that would expand it and give people a lot more walkable options.
Okay. Good. Yeah.
Rutland has a really awesome little right downtown science, children's science museum. Sort of when you talk about makerspace, it's not a makerspace, but there's like a little supermarket and the kids go in and play with the food and little, experimental things that the kids can do. And,
yeah.
Toddlers when we were talking about little children, it's awesome.
That sounds pretty cool.
Well, I think that kind of ties into the idea of the makerspace, and activities, talking about, like I was thinking of the co-op that's in Lebanon where you do cooking classes, and is there a way to tie that into the community for young and old?
Okay. Yeah.
This is not uncommon, so you don't have to travel far to see it, but one thing that I don't see here in this area is that it's not necessarily bike-friendly. And when we think about young families as well,
yeah,
there are times, I mean, I live in a small village over in Meriden, I work at the co-op, but even just the small track there at Kimball Union, families bring their little kids there to learn how to ride a bike.
Mm-hmm.
And that if there was, maybe it's a space that, you know, sometimes there are small skate parks. You know, we talk about the arcade example. But an area where, you know, a parent can bring a kid and the kid can get, you know, bike around. The school may be it. Maybe the school parking lot after hours is that sort of space. But I'd say, you know, it's that idea of, you know what, I'm just going to bike over to the other side of town. I'm not looking at wide thoroughfares or mixed-use pathways. But when I do look at this town, I do see sometimes that I don't see that option.
Yeah.
So, or one that's clearly defined or safe enough.
Okay.
You know, safe enough is very vague, but I'll throw it out there.
Yeah. All right.
I have one other, when I went to Florida, Kissimmee, Florida had this little area called Old Town, and they had like little cobblestone streets, and they had little businesses, all different types. And then on the other side of that, they had like an amusement, like a small amusement park, but also like an arcade. But they also brought in outside things every weekend, so there may be a concert, or there might be a car show. But it was all a mix of everything, but done in the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
And you could walk, there was a bike path. It was really very quaint, but there was all mixed entities in there.
Okay.
And it was really sweet and safe, and it was real fun for the whole family.
Yeah. All right, so we should probably move on to the next thing. We'll have some time later on, so if anybody thinks of something while you're working away here, just scribble them down and we'll get them back up. So we're going to look at some photographs. Should I turn the lights off? It's a little hard to see, right?
Halfway, speaking to you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Oh, you're sleeping.
All right, no sleeping. I'll come around and I'll poke you. So these are images from other places, and you're gonna have to, you know, bear with me a little bit, because you can look at any of these and go, yeah, that's not quite right. And, you know, it's kind of true of any photograph. You're like, well, that's not my town, and that's not going to work. So what I would say is there's a whole bunch of these, and if you could think about, first off, what you like about them, and if you have something to say, you know, just kind of almost shout it out. We can raise hands, I guess, but we'll see how it goes. And then maybe after we hear a couple good things, or there's just no one wants to say anything good about anything, we'll assume that's maybe not the thing you want for this town. So this is number one. Any thoughts on?
I like the trees.
Like the trees? Okay, good. Thank you. Positive. I like it. Other?
The buildings are too close.
Buildings are a little dense for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of times towns can get hung up on zoning, and I know there's a purpose for it, but also there needs to be clarity. The one thing that's nice about awnings is it allows for walking on rainy days.
That's true.
Slow down.
All right. All right. I said I have a lot of these, so we're going to just keep on going, and that way you won't fall asleep on me. Yeah?
Low height, you can still see the ridge lines in the trees.
Okay.
The buildings are lower.
So because of the topography?
It feels in touch and held into the topography.
Okay.
Is there underground utilities there, like the electric lines?
There, oh, well, you can, there are electrics on the, I can see it up here. It's up in the hole there.
I like the wider curb cuts, you see around here.
So, wide curb cut space?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a lot of character to it, though.
Not a lot of character to it, yeah. Good, bad, indifferent?
It's basically a strip mall.
Strip mall, which is
Bad,
bad. Okay,
very bad.
all right.
I think the first picture, it wasn't perfect, but it had that more of a kind of a marketplace
Feel?
as opposed to this.
Okay, good.
I'm concerned about parking on the street with the school being right there, and we're talking about an area that's safe for walking and for kids. If there's a way that the streets don't have to incorporate pull-in parking or parallel parking, and there can be kind of parking where people can walk more safely.
So a separate defined parking lot,
Perhaps.
perhaps.
So there's not a lot of backing in and out and
Yep.
stuff like that.
And is that partly because of the current condition out there, that people are backing and driving, and, or is that more just a general comment?
It's just a general comment.
Okay.
Well, but that's certainly the case in Stearns.
Yeah.
That is a problem for the school.
Yeah. Okay.
Before you go, just a comment on this one. We talk about safety and your comment before about walkability. The way the sidewalk comes out allows a pedestrian to get out from behind those cars and be seen as well as see what's coming out.
Yeah. So a little change in the street design can help pedestrians.
So in this one, I like, as a counterpoint, maybe to what was said earlier, I like the taller buildings. If I had to choose, I'd rather have taller buildings that have some space in between them that you can see the hills, so that you can get more density without giving up the entire view.
Okay, good.
I like the planter.
Yeah.
Permanent planter.
Okay.
That planner? Spoke too soon.
Benches? Yeah.
The trash container.
Trash? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
We have a lot, so we're gonna keep
Bench.
going. Benches, good.
Yeah.
That's that same building.
Probably.
But the problem with that building is it's set too close to the sidewalk, so it loses its human scale.
Okay. So you feel like because it's so, you would have to be so close to it?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because it's focused on that building, but it kind of dominates.
Yeah.
Is that, like commercial on the lower level and residential on top?
It is, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Coffee. Or at least the fee.
I see one problem with the branches coming up too high where that car could melt.
These guys?
Yep.
Yeah. So plant selection and maintenance and things like that?
And snow removal too, especially in the winter. It's hard to park in downtown
Yeah.
White River a lot because, especially if you're handicapped,
Yeah.
because a lot of times the the streets aren't down to the bare minimum. So it's hard to park and get out of your car.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I like the specific implementation, but I like the effort to break up the pavement with all the green.
So here and here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Both.
The planted median gives the pedestrians a place to stop too on their way across a wider street.
Right.
So you don't have to.
If you get a little
Maybe
hung up.
entire trip
Yeah.
in one dash.
Yeah.
Just like that. There we go.
I like that old-fashioned light from previous.
Uh-huh.
Two places to walk.
Good.
Trash
And
container.
park.
Park booking, yeah. Am I going too fast now?
Is that in Pennsylvania?
I don't know, actually. I know some of these are from Michigan. I took them a long time ago.
used to live in Pittsfield, Mass, in the Berkshires, and that looks like some of the buildings on North Street.
It could actually be from Pittsfield. I've taken a lot of pictures there too. Yeah.
And actually, that looks very familiar. Height, but it's been a good reuse of those. The height, height and light are important, and that's
right.
What do you do with these old kind of decrepit buildings? That's a good example.
What do y'all think about the height?
Appropriate for this.
I like it, you know, this kind of architecture seems to be appropriate for an area with more population density than we have here, and yet, you know, come 20 years, we could be there. So if we kind of look forward that way,
yeah,
I can imagine something like, I mean, it's forward-looking, but it'd be better to be that way than holding back.
Yeah. Okay.
Just going to a previous comment, the corner of that building is pulled away enough from the curb that you're not walking out, you know, it just provides a little visibility.
Yeah.
So open field without sacrificing too much.
Okay.
It also seems like they're highlighting their old architecture, which is very nice.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody has said this, but the pedestrian walkway there being done in brick instead of asphalt. Looks nice.
I like that.
Just visually, it looks nice and it makes it
Okay.
safer.
It's the orientation of the building could have been, you know, if it's on an angle, it could have been rotated 180 degrees, maybe to accommodate more parking, but this way it has that touch of green, so it's you know, you look at the bank building across the street and there's your example.
Yeah.
Of the opposite.
Right.
Outdoor cafe.
Good.
Yeah.
But the problem with that outdoor cafe is it forces the pedestrians closer to the street and have them navigate between those two posts.
Yeah. So it's a fine line.
Yeah.
It's a very fine line.
Well, the outdoor seating for a restaurant is a great idea, maybe not this implementation, but people, it seems like I know a lot of people around here love to eat outside
Yeah.
at a restaurant.
This time of year, if it's a nice night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one looks like it doesn't have enough walking room.
A little busy, a little tight.
Yeah.
But vibrant looking.
There you
Vibrant,
go.
yeah.
Community.
If there wasn't a road right there, it would probably work better.
A
You know?
little space for people to get around it or whatever.
Yeah.
Nice little ranch cracks in there, snow nice.
I said only positive things.
Oh, yeah. It's lovely.
Oh, you did. No, you did.
Trees on both sides of the street is nice.
Yeah. Okay.
It's nice that does not feel, I'll go back to the bicycling statement, that to me is not just bike friendly for average novice bikers.
Sure.
So you've got your traffic and your potential for opening car doors in the
That guy
park
right
area.
there.
Yeah, it looks like they're taking a glance.
Yeah.
It's you know, it feels like reasonable density, that the homeowners aren't gonna be spending a lot of time cutting their lawn.
That's true.
And yet it has a neighborhood feel. Is it perfect for this zone that you're talking about? Maybe not, but it's an example.
Looks like somebody would sit on the beach side.
The use of a second story porch or balconies or places where people in apartment buildings can get outside and have patio plants or things like that,
Right.
I think is really positive. Maybe having architecture that kind of steps back in a way that each floor gets some outside space attached to their door.
Is that solar panels on the roof?
I don't.
I've been
I think it's
looking.
just metal.
No.
Yes? You like that? Interesting?
Maybe not exactly that, but interactive things for places for people to sit or
Yeah.
kids to play or
Right.
add beautification.
Like I said, very few photographs actually are perfect, so you gotta be like, yeah, there's something about that I like.
I love the idea of a space like that that's not just a bench and a tree, right?
Right. A little more to it.
Yeah.
Little kids can climb on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can sit on the rock, or you could throw a blanket down, have a little bite to eat.
Yeah.
For something like that, like a small waterfall.
Yeah.
Way too tight.
What's that?
Way too tight.
Yeah.
Way too tight? Okay.
The before is something that could be really kind of cool.
Yeah.
Or,
But the colors of the buildings kind of make it bright.
or, like you say, it could be the before picture, or it could be a potential solution to an area that you're not going to change, but simply by some variation in color scheme, adding some green, adding some character, again, it builds that sense of, wow, this is a neat place to live or
Lots of windows,
Yeah.
glass.
There are sometimes you just can't widen the street or level the building.
About 5 weeks ago, we hosted here in White River Comeback Communities event. And Hartford and White River were fortunate to be chosen as, there's 2 from Vermont, 2 from New Hampshire. And one of the comments, there's different business leaders, town officials from the different communities speaking. And one of the salient points I picked up was that everything is incremental. And there's this belief that, okay, we have to do this and do the whole thing now.
Right.
And that's never reality. And so I think what you're saying is that, yeah, this may not necessarily be the next amazing project, but clean, neat, a little fun, and that's its next iteration.
Mm-hmm.
And a touch of character.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm understanding the photograph correctly, but it feels like there's a curve there, which if there wasn't parking, but it was more of this European like foot traffic, little niche shops,
Yeah.
and instead of being based on a grid, there were curves and spaces that made it more sort of intimate and, you know, exciting
Visually
looking,
interesting.
visually interesting.
Sure.
I think it would relax people and create a lot of interest.
Yeah. Okay. That's great.
Is that ice cream?
Do you want ice cream?
We could definitely use an ice cream shop downtown.
Okay. I don't know if that's what that is, but let's pretend it is.
Is there any place like that? Oh wait, there is one up on Taft Lot, there is a laundry.
You used to have laundry over here.
That barrier in between the last, that's this side and that side.
This?
Yeah.
Don't like that? Okay. All right.
So the gas station's a dinosaur that we don't need to add, but the convenience stores, you know, there's not a, is there?
No,
A good
downtown.
24/7 convenience store downtown? I think you have to go up to Cumbies, don't you, to get to the nearest one?
You gotta go
In
to
town,
Cumbies
or
or you
across
gotta
the
go
river.
to Circle K.
Yeah, Cross River.
I think I'm gonna have to pick up the pace here.
Yeah.
So you guys shout if you want to say something.
Oh, food trucks.
That sounded like a shout.
That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can take the- oh, there's that little sandwich goods there.
Yeah. That could meet the lunch needs.
And variety.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's just awesome. I want to live there now.
That's actually, you know, not, I mean, that's not that expensive, right? I mean,
No.
it's That's kind of cool.
Some greenery up in that lattice work there.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be
Would be nice, good, put another, like a food court there.
Yeah.
For the food trucks.
You could have the farmer's market.
Or a cold beverage.
Overlap of the farmer's market.
And in the winter, it could be hot beverages?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Landscaping.
Nice.
So it's a multi-purpose.
It would be nice to keep it a little relaxed like that. I think, like, anytime we see these open spaces,
Like this?
yeah, and like the other corner one there,
Yeah.
just have it a little more relaxed.
Okay.
For some reason, that's not a good setup, but for some reason, this reminds me of like a game space, you know, with like chess tables or whatever, game tables that you could play chess on or other things like that.
Yeah.
I like spaces like that to work in and walk through.
Yeah.
And it's just, and they have us in the right cities. Those places have a lot of vibrancy.
Yeah.
Because they, you know, there's people, there's residential, it's mixed use.
And the buried utilities allow for that.
And that building looks like an old fire department.
Yeah.
Cobblestones are nice.
Cobblestone is nice.
Except for snow removal.
So, I have more. I had a hard time judging how many I should do. Do you guys, I mean, I think we've covered a lot of ground here. If you guys feel good, should we go on to the next activity? All right, I'm gonna turn the lights on. Everybody shield your eyes, because it's gonna be bright. All right. Well, thanks for that. I think, you know, like I said, the photographs are a little tough, but it brings out thoughts about scale and massing and proportion and how things sit next to each other and kind of different ideas and all that. So I think that was worthwhile. So now's the time where you guys have to do a little work for us. So we have, what did we do with this? We have a number of bases, kind of like these. We're going to put them out on the table, and we're going to give you a little direction on how to like think or draw on them, and we're going to help you. Or, if you don't like that idea and you want to go for a little walk, we can go over to the site and actually walk around a little bit and kind of talk about things and take notes. And this doesn't have to, we can do both. Some of us can stay here and some of us can go for that walk. So, does that sound good? Yeah? All right. How many people want to go for the walk idea?
It is
All right.
drizzling a little bit, so
it's-
your raincoat and your umbrella, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Is it
It's a
raining?
little drizzly. Got a raincoat.
It's raining still. How many people want to go for the walk? Good, because Taylor's going with you, so. And we'll get you guys, other people set up to think about drawing a little. We're going to move to our little next phase here, basically start to wrap up. But it now might be a good time to share any big ideas that people have, something they saw in the field or something they came to as a conclusion working on things. Does any group want to start with that? I know that's a little vague, but just highlights, something important that you saw or realized.
Yeah. So facing the slope that is basically right in front of you when you come down. A residential cascade that's maybe starts like at the 6th floor and then kind of steps forward so that each space has a roof deck and it's south facing, so it can be heating efficient and solar, and so those would be, you know,
Interesting.
basically built into, like, looks like it's built into the landscape without navigating the space or the slope, and then having footpath that connects up with the upper neighborhood where the high school is, so that the high school students actually can walk down to this whole developed area that will have, you know, lunch and coffee and.
Yeah, I know some of the other groups were talking about pedestrian connections to that upper neighborhood and how they have kind of dwindled over the years. Yeah, good. What else? Yeah?
We were also playing around with the idea of a big square walking path that will go along the Connecticut, turn at the White, and then cut underneath the tracks somehow across to Route 5 and then down again to the Connecticut. So forming a big square would be a neat way of creating a walking path that circumscribes the whole thing.
Did that get drawn at all, or?
Just drew it.
Okay, good, all right. Perfect. Other big ideas?
Small idea.
Small idea?
Daycare function came up as a good adjacency to the school. And,
What was that?
Daycare?
Daycare came up as a good potential future path.
We want to build another underpass under the railroad tracks.
Yep.
To Prospect Street.
Prospect Street.
Well, we definitely changed circulation, so.
Yeah, the outdoor group was talking about that too.
Just north of the bus yard.
Yeah, or even north of the auto parts place, north or south of the auto parts place, really.
Yep, good. All right, well, I think we'll collect the papers and the ideas. Basically, we'll be working, Sanborn Head will be working on some of the environmental issues and delving into those more. And we'll be developing some of these ideas, and we'll bring all that back, and there'll be a future meeting where we'll kind of report, not a final version, but like getting there. And it'll be a chance, we'll probably bring sort of several ideas and get your input on, yeah, that's kind of really good, or you missed the mark on that one. And we'll take your input at that time. So hopefully we'll see you all back when we do that. I'm not sure when we'll get that scheduled, probably later in the summer maybe, or something like that. But we really appreciate everybody's input and discussion and effort and writing things down, and it's really been helpful to get a better sense for the area and what you're interested in and all that. So I really thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
And I thank you very much for coming out. If you did not sign the sign-in sheet when you came, please do that. We are going to have a series of other meetings. We want to, one more for this section, and we want to make sure that you know about it. And this will go to the next level, as well as any other things that I have. This other meeting I talked about coming up on July 11th, that we're going to be talking about community resources. That's going to be feeding into our town plan, so please take a flyer, please come. Please share the wealth of your knowledge of this and encourage others to come.